Welcome your faces back to episode number 64 of the series Profit or Loss. I buy faulty items usually from eBay, attempt to fix them and sell them on for a profit. The last 3 weeks have been extremely generous, putting us now on a total of £478.10. The goal of the series was to reach £1,000 in the plus, or worst case in the minus, and this is the closest that we've been to hitting 1,000. Will we take that extra step in today's video to reach our target? I paid a grand total of £180 for this PlayStation 5. It is indeed the disc edition, and condition wise, it's really good. The only thing that I would say is down the bottom we have a crack. In the listing it states that this is a catalogued returned box, and it turns on. That's as much as we can test. Usually they can't read discs, but it could be anything. So that's all I know with this console. But the fact that we have this massive crack here would indicate to me that maybe we've had a little bit of drop damage. Let's just confirm that what the seller is saying is actually true and that it goes to a white light. Before we do that, a massive thank you to our sponsor in today's video, PCBWay. PCBWay is the solution for all your PCB needs. Imagine this scenario: you're in dire need of a reliable service to print some custom circuit boards. Those boards need to be great quality, have fast shipping and be at a very good price. PCBWay have you sorted. Simply start your instant quote and customize your PCB to how you want it. Anything from thickness to solder mask color. And then in a few simple steps, you'll be ready to check out. PCBWay also offers services such as CNC machining, 3D printing, injection molding, and sheet metal fabrication. Why not check out the gift store where you can buy preheaters, soldering irons, multimeters, and much more. Head on over to PCBWay.com to get started. Let's plug in the power cable and let's go with a HDMI as well. We'll turn the PlayStation on. It does turn on, good stuff. Now the second question is, does this go to a white light? That's what we're looking for. Were they 100% true? Yes, they were. White light on the console. Lovely. Jubbly. Now, do I get a display is the next question. I can't show you on the game capture because of HDCP, but I'm checking my monitor now. It doesn't look like it. Okay, so we have no display. We have a white light. Wicked. Let's turn the console off, unplug what we need to unplug, and now we're going to look at the most important thing here. Does this have a warranty sticker? Yo, the warranty sticker is intact. Would you look at that beauty? That's what we love to see. This is indeed also one of the newer revisions, and when I say newer, I'm not talking about the slim model, but rather the models that have the smaller bit of tape here. So the motherboard in this is usually taken up mostly on this side, which is the same for the older ones as well, but it's a bit smaller. Model number on this is a 1216A. Let's get this down to the board, and here we have it. Board out of the chassis. Transitions, I love doing them, you know. Let's take this under the scope, and I'm going to put my money as to where the issue is, just to give you some sort of an idea on the size that I was speaking about a second ago. This is the board we are currently working on, and this is the older revision. This specifically is a 010. This board revision is a 033, but you can see there is quite a comparable size difference here. If I put it like that, I should give you a better, there we go, look at that. Probably about a third of the size. First things first, the actual HDMI port, how are we looking? You know what? That HDMI port looks okay. We have a little bit of a bend just in the metal here, but other than that, we look all right. Now, when I was working at Rocket Repairs, the issue that I used to get with the factory ports is that the strength on them is horrendous. Now, what I will say is I think this PS5 has been dropped because of the fact of what's happened to the casing. And even though we can't see any damage to the port externally, you can clearly see on the inside, which is attached to the motherboard, that these pins, some of them anyway, not all of them, are loose. It's usually this one here, pin 19, which causes majority of the issue. But you can see that this one is also pushed back, which goes to this line here. Just checking the rest of them. And that one's loose. That's a data pin. That's a data pin. That one's a data pin, that's loose, that's ground, so it doesn't really matter too much, but this one's also loose. So it definitely needs a HDMI port swap. And I used to say the same thing, that on majority of occasions, if you've done the same thing with the Xbox Series X, I actually would put a little bit of money on it that the Xbox Series X would be fine if the outside of the port looked the same as what it does on this PS5. The internal structure on the board of the Xbox Series X HDMI ports is a lot more solid than the PS5's, in my opinion, of course. And now hopefully I'll be able to show you a nice, clean HDMI port extraction. We flip the board over, we're going 480 degrees with an airflow speed of 99% on the Aton ST862D hot air station. I'm not going to add any flux, I'm not going to add any solder to the pins, leaded solder. You can do that, but I personally don't see the need of doing it. It's something that I used to do at Rocket Repairs when I first started doing the PS5 HDMI ports, but the more comfortable I got with them, I realised you actually don't need to. This is what works for me. There are 1,000 ways that somebody might do this differently. So that port's going to come out now, and I'm just holding it with my tweezers and letting it fall into my tweezers because you don't want to pull any pads here. Just like that. And now I'm going to do what a lot of people actually don't enjoy doing, but for some reason I really enjoy it, and that's use my solder sucker. You do have to have somewhat of a steady hand whilst doing this, but I think the most important thing is that you don't have much reverb in the board. When you have reverb, things might bounce off. But I'm going to show you here. So I'm just putting some heat back into the board now. And we do have to be careful because we have little components over this side with that diode. But now this should be almost very ready. There we go, to come in with the solder sucker. So we just take our solder sucker, plant on it firmly. Might take a couple of tries. There we go, that one's clean. That one's clean. And again, this is where we have to be a little bit cautious. Make sure we got a good grip. Make sure that solder is fully melted. There we go. There's one. There's two. Just like that. And you can see here as well, we have the resistor, we have the big diode, we have the small cap, and we have the little diode here. None of them fell off the board. Just scraping some of that factory flux off. No need whatsoever, just my OCD. There we go. We have a very, very clean pull. Now, usually, for example, on a Nintendo Switch, I would tell you just to leave the solder of where the USB-C port is. However, on a PS5, because as I stated, a couple of minutes ago, this unleaded solder isn't great. So I'm going to get all of this off, and then we're going to fill up all the ground holes and these pads here with leaded solder. Fume extractor is indeed on because health is wealth. Now we're going to come in with our flux and our wick and soldering iron and just get all of this unleaded off the board, whilst being very careful not to get that cap off. There we go. There it is. And then we come in, clean up this flux. Make our life a little bit easier, see what we're doing. Nobody likes a messy board. And now we prep, simple as plenty of flux. Take our leaded and just fill these ground holes. Get that solder going all the way through the board. This is going to play a pivotal part when we're putting the port on, because we need that solder to come all the way through and hug those legs. Make it strong. There we go. That's gone all the way through. And then finally, just over here. Now that flux is going to be nice and warm, in which case we should just be able to clean it really easily because the board is hot. Cotton swab. There we go. And this process has taken me a very, very long time to get to, a lot of practice. So please don't be disheartened if this is something that you try to do and it's not working. Everyone eventually comes up with their own little methods of doing things, and you might find that some things work better for you or go horrendously worse. But this is the best method that works for me. And I bet that this is going to have a massive blob of solder on the other side, and I can't wait to see it. And would you just look at that. Now we grab our PS5 HDMI port. Don't have to tin this. I don't always do it. But you know what? Today I'm going to. So I'm going to apply a little bit of flux. Take that big blob off because we don't need that. Because we don't want any of this flux going inside the port, you see. Making it an issue for the connections on the other side. Soldering iron. And this might take a couple of attempts, but we just glide it over. Get rid of any of those bridges that we can see. There we go. And then I simply just take a little cotton swab and get rid of any of the flux that might be just hanging around. Because again, it doesn't need to be there. And again, because we love to, some fresh flux just here. We don't need to apply too much here. So I'm just going to spread this out with the end of the syringe. And just make sure we have enough in the places we need it. Just like that. And the reason I clean up majority of my flux is because I had a bad issue of thinking that I was doing the HDMI ports wrong, but in fact all it was flux clogging up the HDMI port, so when I went to test it wasn't making a good connection. So here we go, heating from underneath the board, exactly the same temperature and airspeed. It's going to be 480 degrees Celsius with an airflow speed of 99% here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my hands just to put this port on, because the port itself is cold and it has quite long legs, so it doesn't get hot very quickly. So you can see, there we go, the solder's all starting to drop and molten. So I'm just waiting for those pins in the middle to also molten. And now what I can do is drop this port on, move the air back and forth, not keeping it in one singular position. And then what I like to do, when the port is up to heat with the actual board itself, then I like to move it around and make sure that that port bonds with the pins that we have, or pads should I say, on the actual board itself. And you can see that they're all bonding. They're all getting on with each other very nicely. I'm just going to give it a nice little tap forward. And that is looking like a good port. So again, I'm just circling the heat and making sure that the solder's actually come up on the legs of the port, which it has, I can see nicely. Just making sure over here as well. And now I'm going to come off the heat. And if you do this right, you don't need to go over the pins. So wait for that solder to harden, which it has. Now, the most important thing, if you want to make any changes or touch up the pins or anything like that, now is the time to do so whilst the board is hot, because that is when solder is going to flow easiest. What I'm doing is cleaning it, because as we know, flux is really easy to clean off the board when the board is hot, and the flux is still fluxing. So let's take a cotton swab, do that. If I turn it over, we need a little bit more solder here and a little bit on this one just up here, but the other two are absolutely fine. Now I come in with some IPA and just tidy up those little bits. Same for this side. Drop of IPA now. Just get rid of any of that flux that we've got left around the port. There we go. I think we look good. Right. Let's have a look at the pins. These pins are looking great. They all look soldered, as you can see, every single one of them. There is no need to go over them. We do have a little bit of cotton swab fibers just here, which makes it look a little bit dirtier than what it is, but this is fantastic. This is a nice, strong, solid port, and we can just confirm by prodding these pins just to make sure they are connected. But I can see they are connected, and we don't in fact have any bridges. There is no need for me to go over these pins. We can see solder has come up on this ground leg. It's come through the board here, but it's not risen all the way up the leg, which is fine. That one looks really, really good on that side. And this one on this side, front one, also looking really, really good. This one, I said, doesn't have enough solder, but it is creating that pyramid effect, which is really, really good. People might actually argue that this is better than this, but regardless, I'm just going to add a tiny bit of flux. Again, from an OCD standpoint, just give these a little bit more. Getting a good contact on the pin and the board itself. That's one. That's two. Get that flux off. Cotton swab. And there we have it. That's the back of the port. That's the front. And we are looking good. Good enough to test. What I will say with this device is that it's going to be very, very rare for you to find something like this on eBay for £180 that hasn't been opened before. I've got extremely lucky with this. I'm talking as if I know it works, which I don't, and we could have more issues. But sometimes I might pay £180 for a PS5 console that's been looked at 10 times over by different technicians. I think I was just relatively quick to pick this one up and extremely lucky. I have actually already turned the PS5 on and disabled HDCP so you can see this. We have a fully working PS5. The HDMI port is really, really strong. I'm giving it a wiggle now, and we don't have any cutting out or anything along those lines. As you saw, I've probably played about an hour's worth of Fortnite just to make sure that we are fully working with the console. That's going to turn out to be quite a nice little profit. Let's head on over to Sally's spectacular spreadsheet to see how much profit we've made. Cost-wise, we're looking at £180 because that's what I paid for the PS5. The parts is a port. Now, these ports are getting relatively cheaper and cheaper. I'm going to go with 50p. For the sell price, I sold a PS5 a disc edition for £270 plus postage the other day, which leaves us with a profit for today's video of £65.20. If we put that towards our total, £65.20p, we have a lovely, jubbly £543.30 in total as profit. Quick shout out to the live stream that we did recently on Sunday just gone. We managed to raise over £10,000 for a charity called Mind here in the UK. I'm currently recording this the day after, and the support that came from the community yesterday, trying to put it into words is actually quite difficult, believe it or not. So a massive thank you to the repair community for taking part in that stream. Whether you watched, donated, like whatever you've done, if you were there, thank you. I'll leave a link to this playlist up here, so if you do want to, you can start from the beginning. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day /week/weekend, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.